Good morning, YouTube. Today I just want to talk to people about why it's important to start gardening right away. If you're the kind of person that thinks that you are going to garden in a maybe some sort of apocalyptic world, or you think that the economy goes south and you're going to just start gardening in your backyard, I want to share something with you. It just expresses why you should start gardening before before something like that happens, because it takes a lot of practice and you have to make a lot of mistakes, and it's a learning curve, and you don't want to be behind the curve when you or your family is depending on your garden as a supplemental food source, or maybe your only food source. So I'm just going to show you something on my garden that it just kind of brings this point to light, something I learned this year, and I'll share it with you. Okay, well, here's my garden. You guys have seen it before, and last time I was showing you the tomatoes over there and how I built that wooden pergola thing to lift them up, and let me just go through some of this stuff here. This is my second batch of lettuce that I put in this bed, and there's some volunteer tomatoes. Those are tomatoes that come up on their own. My experience with that is, if you think that, oh well, I had beefsteak hybrid tomatoes in here last year and some must have dropped, and I'm gonna just pull these out or keep them growing and I'll get beefsteaks this year. Well, that's not the case. My experience tells me that what you will get is a cherry tomato, something very much like a cherry tomato. Every time I've ever replanted a volunteer, it has almost always been some form of a cherry tomato grows off one of these plants that comes up on its own. So cherry tomatoes are great. I like to eat them, but you should just know that. That's something I know because I've started gardening. This is my second batch of radishes. Quite a few here. A couple of my sons like radishes. I like radishes. My wife will have a few in salad, and I can give some to friends. Today what I'm doing is taking out these green beans. We got many green beans off of this one small patch. But next I want to share with you this next bed. And you know, if you look at this, it's just a mess. And in one of my previous videos I said that these cucumbers had been decimated by squash bugs. So this was the learning experience that it's not that big a deal for me this year, because I can go down to the store and I can buy a cucumber if I need one. And they're not cheap, but they're very accessible and within my budget, of course. What happened was, over here where you see I've freshly tilled, I had a couple rows of squash, and we have these bugs around here called squash bugs, and they took over the squash and they started stunting its growth and attacking the various squashes, and it got to the point where I just had to eradicate them somehow, and because I was not going to get any squash off of those plants. And I'll zoom in on a couple squash bugs here so you can kind of see what they look like on some old squash. There's one of the little critters right there. And here's some more. And they sort of gang up on the squash and just suck the life out of them, and they suck the life out of the plants as well. So my gardening experiment or attempt to get rid of them was to go and buy a over-the-counter organic pesticide that said that it would kill these critters, and it was made from a mixture of other plants and chrysanthemums and garlic and what have you. So I sprayed that on them and thought, well, it'll take a little time and they'll die, and then I can get rid of the squash plants and till it up. Well, what they did was they all immediately migrated over here to the cucumbers that were producing big, beautiful cucumbers. And I guess the cucumber is just close enough to a squash in variety that they felt that was a good substitute. Rather than to eat a squash that had been sprayed with the organic pesticide, they came over here and set up shop, and within a few days killed the cucumbers. Now, the pesticide never seemed to kill the squash bugs. As a matter of fact, the squash that I just showed you, where the squash bugs were still feeding on, all of those squash were sprayed with that same pesticide, and so it doesn't seem to work. And if you wanna contact me down below or something, just let me know, and we'll get another. I'll let you know what that product was. Excuse me for a second. Anyway, the point being is that had this been a situation where my family was depending on this squash or depending on these cucumbers either to eat or to barter or trade with neighbors who maybe had some other variety of vegetable that had more vitamins and nutrition, we would have been in bad shape, because I would have, within a couple days, knocked out everything that we were planning on doing. So it's very important that you don't just buy a seed vault and stick it in your freezer or in a cool, dry place and think that should something happen, you're just going to go out and start from scratch and dig up the ground, put some seeds in, and within a few weeks you'll be eating. This is not the case. I've been gardening with my mom when I was a younger boy, and I've been gardening here on and off for about 7 or 8 years, and I'm continuously learning things about gardening. What works better, what kind of soils the plants grow better in, whether tilling is necessary or maybe it's not necessary in some cases. It's just a constant learning situation, and you don't want to be trying to figure this out when you're hungry, when your family's hungry. Get out there and garden now. Learn now. Plant things now. It's okay if you make mistakes. Get your seed vault. Maybe get 2 and plant the seeds from 1. See what it does, and learn about those particular seeds and those varieties and how they grow and what makes them grow better, and get your mistakes out of the way now while it's not critical. You don't want to be making mistakes like I made this year with these cucumbers when you really need it. So I guess I've beat that dead cat enough and got my point across to some of you. If you have any questions, drop me a note below, and keep gardening. See you later, YouTube.